The flashbulbs in the Capitol lobby were absolutely blinding. Marcus gripped my elbow, the fine wool of his tailored suit brushing my arm as two large men in private medical transport uniforms stepped directly into my path. They were holding soft restraints. Right behind him, draped proudly across the marble wall, a massive banner read, "Champion for Arizona Foster Families." Marcus leaned in close. His grandfatherly smile never wavered for the cameras clicking away in the press pool. "Do not make a scene, sweetie," he whispered, his voice dripping with venom. "You are going away for a long time, and I am keeping every single dime." Have you ever had a toxic family member try to use your own reaction against you to prove you were the crazy one? Drop a comment and let me know where you are listening from right now. I would love to know who is part of our community. Just a few feet away, my stepsister Courtney shoved her phone in my face. The little red live indicator was blinking steadily. She was broadcasting my so-called mental breakdown to thousands of her followers, narrating my sudden tragedy with a perfectly rehearsed pout. They wanted me to thrash. They needed me to scream and fight the transport team. A violent, public reaction was the exact symptom Marcus needed to justify this ambush and lock me away. But panic is usually just a symptom of not knowing the process, and Marcus had made a fatal miscalculation. I coordinate regional medical clinics for a living. I handle symptoms, intake protocols, and actual psychiatric emergencies every single day. I know exactly how an involuntary hold works. And more importantly, I know exactly how a sane person is supposed to act to prove the diagnosis is a fraud. I did not scream. I did not jerk my arm away from his bruising grip. Instead, I went completely limp. I let my body turn to dead weight, calmly bending my knees to set my purse gently onto the polished marble floor. I raised my hands slowly, palms open, offering no resistance at all. I let the cold reality of the soft restraints brush against my wrists without even blinking. I looked right past the blinding cameras, right past Courtney's glowing screen, and stared directly into Marcus's eyes. My breathing was even. My pulse was completely steady. For the first time all morning, the grandfatherly smile on his face began to crack. To understand why Marcus thought he could break me in front of the press, you have to look at the 48 hours before he snapped those soft restraints on my wrists. For 20 years, he ran a flawless psychological campaign. He convinced me I was nothing more than an unwanted burden. I was a charity case he graciously kept off the streets. I spent my entire childhood scrubbing his floors and doing my stepsister's laundry just to pay off the endless debt of my own existence. My loyalty was a luxury he overdrafted every single day. But his entire empire collapsed on a Tuesday afternoon, all because of a dust rag. I was cleaning the main hallway, wiping down the heavy mahogany frame of my late mother's photograph. It was his favorite political prop to show off to guests, the grieving widower and the rescued child. As I wiped the glass, the brittle cardboard backing finally gave way. It slipped down, and a small silver key dropped onto the floorboards. It belonged to the wall safe hidden behind the bookshelf in his study. I opened it expecting to find old campaign files or tax returns. Instead, I found my actual life. It was not a box of memories. It was a shadow ledger. I found the original, unedited trust documents my mother had left behind. $5.2 million. That was my inheritance. Marcus had not been keeping me out of the goodness of his heart. For 2 decades, he had been legally draining hundreds of thousands of dollars from my own money, masking the theft as fabricated guardian housing fees and behavioral management expenses. I was literally paying his mortgage to be his live-in maid. Most people would have confronted him. They would have screamed and cried and demanded answers. I did not shed a single tear. Emotion is just bad data in an audit, and I simply deleted it. I took the ledgers straight to Derek, a special agent with the Arizona Attorney General. We did not waste a single second on family drama. Over the next 8 hours, we built an airtight case. But Derek had one problem. Marcus was a powerful local politician. He owned the county judges. To bypass his immunity, we needed him to commit a felony so brazen and so public that no local favor could save him. So, I went home and played my part. I let him think I was losing my grip. I let him plan this entire Capitol lobby spectacle. He thought he was dragging a broken girl to a psychiatric ward. He had no idea he was just stepping onto the trap we laid on the marble floor. Marcus turned back to the press corps. He played the tragic, burdened father flawlessly. He actually managed to wipe away a single, perfectly timed fake tear. He told the flashing cameras that he had been forced to make the heartbreaking decision to institutionalize his stepdaughter for an emergency Title 36 psychiatric hold. He painted a picture of a violent, delusional woman who had finally become too dangerous to keep at home. Just over his shoulder, Courtney was practically bouncing on her heels. She narrated her live stream with cruel glee, telling her viewers to watch closely because the freak-out was coming any second. They were both waiting for the tantrum. They wanted the screaming, the thrashing, the desperate pleas for help so they could justify putting me in the back of a van. Instead, I delivered an audit. I ignored Marcus completely. I looked past him and locked eyes with the older of the two transport workers. I did not raise my voice. I spoke with the cold, measured precision of a regional clinic coordinator conducting a standard compliance review. I asked him to hold up the medical order. He hesitated, looking at Marcus for direction, but my tone carried the kind of quiet authority that makes people reflexively obey. He slowly lifted the clipboard. I read it out loud, projecting my voice just enough for the press microphones to catch every single syllable. I started with the most obvious failure. I pointed out that the document completely lacked an admitting officer's signature. I asked the transport worker for the mandatory state case number. He looked down at the paper, his brow furrowing in confusion when he found the field completely blank. Then, I dismantled the paperwork itself. I told him to look at the blue crest at the top of the page. I informed him, and the entire lobby of reporters, that the hospital on that form had retired that specific logo 2 years ago. I knew that for a fact, because my clinic had purchased their surplus medical supplies when they rebranded to green. Finally, I read the doctor's name printed at the bottom. I let the silence hang for a split second before I announced that the physician who signed this supposed emergency order had his medical license permanently revoked last spring for insurance fraud. The older transport worker went completely rigid. The color drained from his face as he looked at the clipboard, then at me, and then at the dozens of cameras recording his every move. He slowly took a full step backward, pulling his partner with him. He dropped the soft restraints to the marble floor. He knew exactly what I was telling him. A medical transport order without an admitting officer, signed by a disgraced doctor on fabricated letterhead, is not a legal psychiatric hold. It is a documented confession to an attempted felony kidnapping, and he was holding the physical evidence. The marble lobby fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. The transport workers had backed completely away, leaving the restraints abandoned on the floor. You could hear the faint, mechanical hum of the building's air conditioning. Then, a man in a sharp gray suit stepped out from the second row of the press corps. It was Derek. He did not shout. He did not rush. He simply walked to the center of the circle, reached into his breast pocket, and flipped open a leather folio to reveal a gold shield. Special Agent Derek Hughes, Arizona Attorney General's Office, he announced. His voice was flat, carrying the kind of absolute authority that instantly paralyzed the room. He glanced over his shoulder at the Capitol security guards stationed by the exits. Lock the glass doors. Nobody leaves. Marcus's jaw tightened. A bead of sweat formed at his temple, catching the harsh glare of the overhead lighting. The grandfatherly mask did not just crack, it disintegrated. He was losing control of the narrative, and a narcissist cornered will always reach for a human shield. He reached blindly behind him, grabbing 10-year-old Mia by the shoulder. He yanked her forward, positioning the small foster child directly between himself and the state agent. "This is absurd," Marcus barked. His polished political baritone was gone, replaced by a frantic, high-pitched desperation. "My stepdaughter is unstable. Look at this child. She is terrified of her. Natalie is an imminent danger to this family." Derek did not argue. He did not even acknowledge Marcus. He slowly holstered his badge and knelt on one knee, bringing himself exactly to Mia's eye level. He pulled a folded copy of Mia's supposed witness statement from his jacket. Mia," Derek said softly, holding up the paper. "This document says you told the doctor that Natalie presented an imminent danger to herself and others." That is a very clinical medical phrase. Derek paused, letting the quiet stretch out for 3 agonizing seconds. "Who taught you those exact words?" Marcus dug his fingers into the little girl's shoulder. "Do not answer him, sweetie," he hissed through a forced smile. But Mia did not shrink back. She did not look at Marcus. She looked straight at the glowing lens of Courtney's phone, which was still broadcasting live to thousands of people. Then, Mia reached down to her right wrist. She unclasped the thick, black GPS tracker bracelet Marcus forced her to wear to ensure she never stepped out of line. It hit the polished marble floor with a sharp, heavy clack. "He made me memorize it," Mia said. Her small voice echoed perfectly across the cavernous lobby. "He told me if I forgot even one word, he would send me to a juvenile detention center." For one perfect, suspended second, there was absolute, breathless silence. The kind of silence that rings in your ears. Then, the flashbulbs erupted. Dozens of press cameras fired all at once, strobing like a violent electrical storm against the walls. The blinding white flashes captured the exact micro-expression of pure, unadulterated terror freezing on Marcus's face. His entire political empire, meticulously curated over 3 decades, had just burned to the ground in under 10 seconds. The flashbulbs were still strobing wildly when Derek stepped forward, pulling a pair of heavy steel handcuffs from his belt. He spun Marcus around without a shred of hesitation. The sharp, metallic click of the locks echoed over the frantic shouts of the reporters. Marcus was officially under arrest for felony kidnapping and witness tampering. But a narcissist never truly believes they have lost, even with his wrists locked firmly behind his back. Standing directly beneath his own hypocritical banner, Marcus let out a low, breathy laugh. He leaned toward me, his voice dropping into that familiar, arrogant sneer. "You think a piece of paper matters?" he whispered, making sure the press microphones could not pick up the sound. "I emptied the trust yesterday. Natalie, $5.2 million. It is completely gone. I legally dissolved the accounts and moved every single cent into an untouchable shell company called Brightway Holdings. You get to watch me walk on bail, and you are still a penniless charity case." Just a few feet away, Courtney lowered her phone slightly. She had heard him. A smug, deeply satisfied smirk spread across her perfectly contoured face. They thought they had won the financial war. They thought they had outsmarted the system. I did not flinch. I did not feel a single ounce of panic. "Brightway Holdings," I repeated, my voice perfectly level. Before Marcus could gloat again, his cell phone vibrated violently inside his suit jacket. Derek reached into the pocket and pulled the phone out, holding the illuminated screen up for Marcus to see. I did not need to look at it to know exactly what the automated notification said. Transfer rejected. Account subject to court restraint. I did not freeze your accounts today, Marcus, I said, letting the cold reality wash over him. Agent Hughes and the Attorney General secured a temporary restraining order from a judge at exactly 4:17 yesterday afternoon. Brightway Holdings is completely frozen. You did not hide my money. You just trapped it in a federal evidence locker. Marcus's sneer vanished instantly. His face turned a sickly, ashen gray as his mind scrambled to find a way out. But my audit was not finished. I turned my attention entirely away from him and looked directly into the glowing lens of my stepsister's phone. There is one more detail, I said, stepping right up to Courtney. I glanced at the small red counter in the corner of her screen. 15,000 live viewers. Brightway Holdings does not belong to Marcus. He needed a clean name to register the corporate paperwork. So, he used your electronic signature, Courtney. Courtney's smug smile collapsed. The blood drained from her face. You are the sole legal owner of Brightway Holdings, I told her, making sure my voice was crystal clear for her entire audience to hear. Which makes you the prime suspect for $5.2 million in federal money laundering. And you just broadcast your complete complicity to 15,000 witnesses. The phone slipped from Courtney's trembling hands, shattering against the hard marble floor. She stared blindly at the broken glass. And then she looked up at the man who had just served her to the state government on a silver platter to save himself. You ruined me, Courtney screamed, her voice cracking in pure, unadulterated hysteria as she lunged at her own father. I stepped back and watched the Golden family eat itself alive. The legal fallout was swift and absolute. Marcus was indicted on multiple federal charges, including wire fraud, perjury, and witness tampering. His political empire vanished overnight. As for Courtney, the state attorney's office opened a massive money laundering investigation into her personal accounts. Her carefully curated influencer life evaporated the second her corporate sponsors watched that live stream. Through court-ordered restitution, I legally seized the remaining $5.2 million. I also took full ownership of Marcus's sprawling luxury estate, which he had secretly financed using my stolen trust. The eviction was a standard administrative procedure. Courtney demanded to stay in the master suite. She stood in the grand foyer, crying, insisting she was just a blind victim of her father's manipulation. I remembered the 14 years I spent sleeping on a rusted cot in the laundry room while she lived in absolute luxury. I did not raise my voice. I did not argue. I simply walked over and handed her a single black garbage bag for her clothes. You broadcast to 15,000 people that I was no longer part of your family, I told her, my voice perfectly level. I am just respecting your wishes. The legal bureaucracy took months to finalize, but the silence inside my head was instant. I did not keep the mansion for myself. A house built on a lie is just a liability. Instead, I placed the entire estate into an independent trust, transforming it into a permanent sanctuary for aged-out foster youth. I wanted to build the exact safety net Marcus had pretended to be. The morning sun poured into the massive kitchen. I stood by the counter, brewing a single cup of coffee just for myself. Across the marble island sat Mia. I had secured emergency guardianship the exact week Marcus was arrested. For the first time since I met her, she was just eating a bowl of cereal in peace. She did not look nervously over her shoulder. She did not try to secretly hide a piece of bread in her pocket for later. She was finally safe. Legacy is not about the bloodlines you inherit. It is about the cycles of abuse you finally break. If you have ever had to enforce a strict boundary to protect your peace, drop a 100 in the comments below and subscribe for more stories of ultimate karma.